Ed, I've got a case today about something I don't know if you've ever thought about. It's a case on hair products.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, maybe you have. I shouldn't make assumptions. But this is for Strategy and it's a healthcare focused case. And it's going to be really interesting because, I don't know if you've seen math like this before. So I'm excited to work through it with you. It should be a fun case.
Great.
Ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So our client is HealthTech, a US-based pharmaceutical company that has developed a remedy for female hair loss and balding called Hair Restore. Hair Restore has been in development for a few years, and the management team is contemplating whether to roll out the drug to the US market now. It's very interesting because you might be surprised to know that Hair Restore has a large addressable market. In fact, in some age groups, 2/3 of women explain and complain that they have lost hair. In other age groups, 1/3, but still maybe more than I certainly expected. And there are a couple of additional important facts. Hair Restore went through a lengthy and delayed testing process with the FDA before getting approval. And Hair Restore will now be, unfortunately, off patent in just a few years. The two questions that we need to answer today are, number one, how would you determine if Hair Restore will be profitable? And number two, after all of our considerations, should we go ahead with the production?
Okay. So, a lot of information there. Sounds like an interesting case. I'm excited to jump into it. Let me just go over what I heard, make sure I've got all the facts right. So our client today is HealthTech. They're a US-based company in pharmaceuticals, and they address female balding. I'm just wondering, do they also focus on male balding, or is it specifically for female?
Just female balding, and it's specifically also focused on hair loss, so not just balding.
Okay, but hair loss
hair
as well.
thinning, et cetera.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And they've been in development for a few years, and they're basically deciding, do we roll this drug out right now? Obviously, there's some complications. They're going to lose their patent soon just because of how long the FDA testing was. They do have a large addressable market though. And so we're here today to decide, how do we know this is going to be profitable, and should we go ahead with it?
Great.
Wonderful. Do you mind if I just take a minute or two to organize my thoughts?
You bet.
Thank you. Okay. So I've come up with some thoughts and I'd love to run them by you.
Go ahead.
And we can get into it. So when I was deciding whether or not this should be profitable and whether we should go ahead with this, I really wanted to bucket into 3 areas. And I wanted to really focus on the revenues themselves. And within the revenues, we've got the market itself in terms of how much market size do we have, the price in which we're selling this at, also the frequency of which we're selling this at. Is this a once a year thing, or is this a once a week thing? In terms of the costs, there's the cost to produce this, there's the cost to distribute this, SG&A, and also there may be more cost with more testing if that's required. I know they've been through a lengthy and delayed testing, so making sure that's not going to continue. And lastly, I wanted to create a bucket for external things. So the FDA, the patent itself, right? We know that that's expiring soon, so that's going to be a big factor if we're looking at a timeline beyond just the coming year. I want to look at competitors. Maybe there's other people in the market who we would have to compete against, or maybe this is a proprietary drug. And lastly, the threat of substitutes in terms of, this is great that this will help with balding and hair loss, but maybe there are substitutes for that. And so we need to account for customers looking out for those as well.
Fantastic. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the revenues.
Okay. And what specifically would you look at if you dive into the data there? What's the data that you'd want here?
Yeah, well, I would love to know, I guess maybe the market itself in terms of how many people we think we can market this to and how many people would actually buy it. And then also multiplying that by the price itself, and also how frequently are they buying this? Is this a treatment, like I said, that's once every day, or is it once a year?
Awesome. And one of the things that we have to think about here, because we have such high upfront costs, is either a net present value or a break-even point. Can you factor in time to your process here for calculating? Is
there and I guess there's 2 ways we can do this. Are we looking at this for the foreseeable future? We're going to launch this drug and we plan to go on it for as long as it works. Or is there a specific timeline that we're looking at in terms of?
What do you think? I've told you a little bit about this FDA approval process. What are you thinking would factor in there?
Yeah, so it's been lengthy and delayed. And so there's obviously a lot of investment that's gone into this already. And also we know that it's off patent soon. And I would imagine once it's off patent, our revenues themselves will decrease a lot because of competitors and people coming in. They can just produce it cheaper or sell it cheaper. So I'd imagine we've got a relatively fixed period of time, maybe a couple of years, 3 to 5 years, perhaps.
Okay. And so how would you factor in the differences between the on-patent and off-patent times?
I really liked what you said about like a net present value in terms of really focusing on here's all the money we expect to get while we have the patent. Here's the remaining money that's going to kind of trickle down once we've finished that. Here's all the investment that we've had at time 0 and even before. Let's calculate a value right today of what is all the future profits worth.
Okay, awesome. And one more question here. When you're thinking about the different options, if we just cut our losses, right? What do we risk from cutting our losses? What do we gain from cutting our losses now?
Yeah, so if we cut our losses now, one thing we can, I guess, avoid is the potential of taking this drug to market and having not enough people buy it. But even then, I think the biggest thing we risk there is one, a huge impact and blow to our PR and to our brand as a whole. I'm not sure if HealthTech produces other drugs and other things, but if they do, then those may not be looked upon favorably if we've gone through all this testing process and then we scrap it at the last minute. And also we're just kissing goodbye a huge investment that we've made. I know that testing is probably not cheap. And so there's probably been a lot of money that's been spent there.
Makes sense. Finally, just dive into the cost categories. What are the key costs here in order of importance from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the number one cost is probably the initial investment in terms of testing and the investment in terms of the factories to actually produce this, as well as labor. I'm not an expert in the pharmaceutical industry, but I would imagine that that's probably a large cost, as well as distribution probably wouldn't be something that's huge. Same with SG&A. This is probably not something that you need to go and advertise to, everyday people. It might be something that people are actually seeking out. But yeah, I think probably the actual investment into the machinery and production equipment, as well as the resources that are going into testing and to getting it approved by the FDA.
Okay, awesome. Well, I do have a little bit of analysis for you that we've done.
Okay.
We've done some detailed financial analysis, actually, and we've estimated that the present value of all future profits, which includes the impact of being off patent, is $3 billion. However, we won't realize the full amount of profitability because we have profitability weighted outcomes from our different trials.
Okay.
And so what that means is that basically the product's not going to work for everybody. Will work for some people, and so this probability weighted trials will kind of help us understand and target where it will work. And so the way that we think about it is that we have 4 phases, and each one there's kind of a passing group out of that. In phase 1, 80% find the product effective. In phase 2, 30%. In phase 3, 50%, and in phase 4, 75%. So my question to you is, what is the profitability weighted profit? The probability weighted profits.
Okay, so like an expected return.
That's right. Yeah, and knowing that the potential return, if 100% of people found this successful, would be $3 billion.
Okay, interesting. So my thought here would be to essentially multiply 5 numbers. So all the probabilities by the all the probabilities by themselves to get the percentage chance that we get to the end and that we actually get all this realized profit.
Okay.
And then multiply that by, by the maximum possible profit. And then that would be our probability weighted profit. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. So I'm just going to start multiplying these now. 80% multiplied by 30%. 10% of 80% is 8, so multiplied by 3 is 24%. Now 24% multiplied by 50% is 12%. Then 12% multiplied by 75% is going to be 3/4 of 12, which is 9. So 9% there. So 9% of 3 billion Well, 10% of 3 billion is 300 million. And we need to remove 1%, which is 30 million. So that'll leave us with $270 million of profit, which is our to be expected profit, accounting for the fact that we could fail and that we could realize it all. It's about 270 million is what we could hope to achieve.
What do you see from these numbers here?
I mean, 270 million is a lot of money. I'm not sure, and that's actually profit, not even revenue. So that's great. And I'm wondering if maybe there's something else we need to factor in, right? Maybe there's competitors and maybe there's other things that we need to factor in, that this might be the probability of getting this profit if every single person buys our product because it's got to the end of trial 4. But maybe not everyone will want to buy it. Maybe people want substitutes, like I mentioned before. And so I think that number is an awesome goal, but I don't think it's 100% realistic. I think it would probably be lower than it would higher, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, the good news is that we actually don't have any wind of any competitors, but we do have a second product that we have in development.
Okay.
And so we've realized that our management is also considering developing an alternative product to Hair Restore. The good news about this is that it would have longer patent protection, but I want you to evaluate the opportunity here. Yeah. So as part of their assessment, they've estimated the potential success rate of the product development. We don't know yet the answers for this one, but this exhibit will show you some of that information. And so looking at this exhibit, I'm wondering if you can tell me what critical insights you could gather. And also, well, let's start there, first of all. And then based on your insights, I may have a secondary question.
Yeah. Before we go into this, I'm assuming this is the same kind of product.
Correct.
It's the same outcomes, purpose, different. Okay.
Different process, would have different marketing, different side effects. However, the actual stated goal is to restore hair for women that have experienced hair loss or female balding. Okay.
Well, looking at this graph, it looks similar to the numbers you gave me earlier. So I'm wondering if maybe there's some sort of comparison we can do of what's going to be better, what's going to be worse. In addition to that, I'm just looking through the process. So our current one is 80, 30, 50, 75 in terms of percentage to get to the next stage.
Yep.
Which is a really high percentage chance that it kind of dips at phase 2 and then it picks back up. This is a lot more similar, right? 60, 50, 40, 60. There's a lot more steady. There's no 30% or 90%. So I'm wondering if maybe this is a slightly more reliable. But I think the best way to calculate that is going to be actually go through and multiply those numbers like we did before.
Great,
and then we can go ahead and compare. Okay, so we have 60%. And we have 50%. We have 40% and 60%. So if we multiply the 60% by 50%, we get 30%. And then if we multiply the 30% and the 40%, that's 10% of 40 is 4, multiplied by 3 is 12%. And then if we multiply the 12% and the 60%, 10% of 12 is 1.2. And then if we multiply 1.2 by 6, 6 times 1 is 6, and 6 times 0.2 is 1.2. So we get 7.2%. Now, 7.2% is lower than 9%. And I noticed that we do have the same present value of 3 billion.
How much lower is it than 9%?
You want me to calculate that out?
Well, I'm just asking, can you do any quick math to figure that out?
Yeah, well, it's roughly... in terms of actual raw percentage points, it's 1.8% lower. But in terms of an actual...
what percentage of that is 9%? Is that 9%?
7.2% is... it's 80% of 9%.
Okay, great. Okay. Does that tell you anything?
Yeah, so
what would be the number? You can do raw numbers if you want to, but...
Yeah, in terms of the actual money that we'd be getting from this... Yeah, so we'd be getting 80% of 270 million. So it'd be 270 million minus the 54 million, which is the 20%. And that would get us around 216 million.
Okay.
Still a great number. Still, hundreds of millions of dollars. But I will say that it's less attractive than the first opportunity.
Should we just scrap it?
Well, can we do both?
Well, why would we do something inferior?
Well, at the end of the day, we do have to worry about cannibalization. We do have to worry about a few things if we launch them at the same time. But there's still room for potentially, many millions more profit if we can do both. Now, what I will caveat that with is that no matter what, we should do the first one. Okay. I will stand by that. We should never do the second one in lieu of the first one.
Okay.
But I think doing them in addition, if we did research and we weren't too worried about cannibalization of our own product, and we weren't too worried about other external factors, then I think we could go into both. So just because of the longevity of this, right? Like you said, we have longer patent protection, and that might give us a chance to bigger our brand and get our foot in that space more, so that when the patent protection goes, we've been around for so long, we're the best product, and everyone wants to go with us.
I like where you're going. Here's my question. On the second one, can you get me to 270 million?
Yeah, absolutely. How? Well, that 7.2% needs to go to 9%. So we would have to change the effectiveness or efficacy of one of the trials.
Okay, so our client is considering an investment that will increase the phase 4 trial success rate. The question is, how much will the success rate have to be, or how much will it have to increase for the alternative product to be as successful as Hair Restore?
Okay. Do you want me to include the cost of this investment, or just focus on getting up to that 270 million?
So just focus on getting me to the 270 million, recognizing that there could be a cost in the change.
Perfect. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is, I know that the success of getting through to trial 4 is 12%. And if we know that that's 12% and we need to get to 9%, we know that 12% multiplied by some number X% is equal to 9%. And just from looking at this, I know that 3 times 3 is 9 and 3 times 4 is 12. So 9 is 75% of 12. So if we do 12% multiplied by 75% success rate in the trial, then we would go ahead and we'd get 9%. And I just want to really quickly verify my numbers, make sure I'm correct on that. 10% of 75% is 7.5%. And then 1% would be 0.75%. Multiply that by 2 for 2% would be 1.5. 7.5 plus 1.5 is 9%. So that works out. If we could get...
Is that a feasible jump?
It's 60% now, so getting up to 75% is a 15 percentage point increase, or it's also a 25% increase on the current effectiveness. I'm not an expert in terms of these trials, and I'd love to be able to call on something and say, oh yeah, this is really attainable and not attainable at all. It seems like a sizable jump, and again, it would have investment associated with it. There would be some sort of cost. So I would, if we had more time, I'd love to figure that out and weigh that in. But for now, I think that it's possible. Again, I'm still really leaning on that first one. I think we should definitely go with that. I don't think this is out of the picture. I think really focus on getting that first one to market, and then this could be a really good opportunity.
Great. Our client's ready for a final recommendation.
Great. So obviously today we've noticed that after going through a long and tedious process with the FDA, our drug's ready to release. And the decision today was do we go with that? And I think we do.
Okay.
The reason being is that even with all realized profits being 3 billion, with our probability weighted, we're still getting 270 million. And while that even may go lower to, even whether it goes to half of that, we're still making a lot of money. And as basic finance tells us, when the NPV is positive, you should go with the investment. And I agree with that. And I think we should go with the investment. Just remembering though that some risks with that are, if it is not adopted by the market as we predicted, that could dramatically alter our profits. Some next steps with this is, I think, make sure everything's signed with the FDA and it has fully got that seal of approval, and get ready to maybe put some money into SG&A in terms of selling that and getting it out to market. And don't forget to keep in mind this second option.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a lot of percentages, huh?
Yeah, that was good.
What'd you think about the case? It's kind of a different one.
It is.
It's in here on purpose. Different firm, different case style, different math. But tell me just a little bit about what you're thinking about here.
Yeah, so just
Self-assess.
It starts off and it's pretty like your average case. Just I think this one was a little bit more bureaucracy heavy. I had to really keep an effort in my mind to remember regulations and FDA and just not forget to remove that as a consideration. But I have to say the math itself is really interesting. I've not really done percentage by percentage by percentage calculations. So that was really fun of finding the common denominators there and then bringing it back to a dollar value. It's really difficult when you're looking at $270 million and you have to remember to caveat it, because if you just say, yeah, 270 million, go ahead, there seems like there has to be something wrong. So just being mindful of other risks that are associated with that, I think was really important.
Yeah, I thought so too. So overall, really good job. Like, when we're thinking about entering the market, as you mentioned at the end, positive NPV is what we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
And so we could have done this in a way other than NPV. We could have looked at break-even points. We could have looked at time series. I think, at the beginning, the one thing that was really missing was a sense of timing. And with these regulatory issues with the long investment costs, just understanding that we're going to have to look at NPV or some kind of break-even point, because it's not going to happen in a year and we're not looking at a 1-year change, right? Different than a lot of the other operational type of cases that you might have seen. Overall, your case structure was pretty good. I really wanted you to tie it back to that bigger issue. And of course, right, revenues, costs are going to be important here. But I also think that you could have used more of an external type of structure.
Okay.
At the beginning, we knew that there was a big addressable market, but we didn't know how much market demand there would be.
Yes.
So maybe just beginning us with, how big is this market actually? We know that women experience balding, but will they purchase it? And talking us through that. And then who are the competitors? There don't turn out to be any competitors. What are the options for our customer segmentation, right? Just thinking through maybe some of that strategically. Nothing wrong with yours, but in a case where I'm directing you into this market type of situation, you could have gone there. I thought you did a really nice job of explaining how you would calculate some of the numbers, but it felt pretty disorganized.
Okay.
It was just a list of all the things you'd like to know. It was like a data request list instead of a calculation. So I would encourage you, especially if you're brainstorming that in an interviewee-led case like this one, right? This is a case for strategy. And so at the beginning, I said, hey, you're going to walk me through this. If you brainstorm a bunch of ideas and I don't happen to have it, you don't necessarily remember what you brainstormed and what you didn't. So just kind of keeping track of that. I thought that you did a really nice job with the first math. And I was going to let you go, but for the interest of time, I just kind of pointed out that one shortcut between the two.
Yes.
Looking for those relationships as shortcuts before you do the math. You're so good at math, but just be careful not to use shortcuts, or be careful to use shortcuts more frequently when you can. So that we can spend our time talking about what really matters. And then, gosh, what a boon day, right?
Yeah.
This 270 million, the 216 million, both are positive. One has long patent protection. The other one doesn't, but still has great profitability potential. I thought you did a really nice job of isolating how we would want to change it. It's possible that we could have changed the price of the second one. It's possible that we could have improved the variable cost based on something else. I felt like you could have gone a little bit broader on that, but overall, really nice job tying everything together all the way to the end. So, good job.
Thank you.